If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to the channel. Sharing it with your friends and family helps spread knowledge, and when we help others grow, we grow too. Thank you so much for listening. Let's dive into the podcast. Origins in Shadow Experiments. The war ended in 1945, but something darker was just beginning. In the chaos of defeated Germany, American agents moved quickly through bombed-out laboratories and hidden research facilities. They weren't looking for gold or weapons. They were hunting for something far more dangerous: knowledge about the human mind. Nazi scientists had spent years studying how to break people, how to control them, how to make them forget and obey. These men had crossed lines that civilized society never imagined existed. Now, with the Cold War brewing, America wanted their secrets. Operation Paperclip quietly brought these scientists to American soil. They traded their dark expertise for new identities and comfortable lives. The official records say they helped with rockets and space programs. The classified files tell a different story entirely. By 1950, the CIA launched Project Bluebird. The name sounded innocent enough, but the work was anything but peaceful. Scientists began testing drugs on unwilling subjects. They studied hypnosis, torture, and psychological manipulation. When Bluebird became Project Artichoke, the experiments grew more extreme. Then came MKUltra in 1953. This program dwarfed everything before it. Hundreds of sub-projects scattered across universities, hospitals, and secret facilities. Doctors gave patients LSD without their knowledge. Psychiatrists used electric shocks to erase memories completely. The goal was simple yet terrifying: create the perfect spy, someone who could carry out missions and forget they ever happened. Someone whose mind could be programmed like a computer, then wiped clean afterward. Deep within these programs, whispers speak of something called Project Monarch. Even less is known about this shadow within shadows. Some researchers believe it focused on trauma-based control methods, using techniques that would horrify even hardened intelligence officers. The few documents that survived tell fragments of the story. Most files were destroyed in 1973 when MKUltra came under investigation. Someone wanted these secrets buried forever. What we do know chills the blood. Children were sometimes used as test subjects. Families were torn apart. Lives were shattered in pursuit of the ultimate weapon: a human being with no free will. The scientists believed they were protecting America. They convinced themselves that any sacrifice was worth preventing nuclear war. But in their laboratories, lines between hero and monster became impossible to see. These programs officially ended decades ago. The buildings were closed. The doctors retired or died. Yet questions remain that refuse to stay buried in classified folders. Trauma-based programming unveiled. Deep within classified files that took decades to surface, investigators found detailed records of methods so disturbing they challenge our understanding of human experimentation. The documents revealed a systematic approach to breaking the human mind, then rebuilding it according to specific designs. The process always began with trauma. Children as young as 5 were subjected to experiences so horrific, their minds would naturally split to survive. This wasn't accidental. It was calculated. The fracturing created what researchers called alters, separate personalities that could be accessed and controlled independently. Once the splitting occurred, the real work began. Electroshock therapy administered at precise intervals would reinforce these mental divisions. Subjects received jolts strong enough to cause temporary memory loss, making them more susceptible to programming. The timing mattered. Too little, and the mind might heal. Too much, and the subject became useless. LSD and mescaline played crucial roles in this process. These powerful drugs dissolved the boundaries between reality and hallucination. During these altered states, programmers would implant specific commands and triggers. A simple word or gesture could later activate a particular alter, complete with its own memories and behaviors. Sensory deprivation chambers stripped away all external input for days or weeks. Floating in darkness and silence, subjects lost their sense of time and identity. In this vulnerable state, new programming could be inserted with surgical precision. Survivors later testified about elaborate conditioning rituals. They described being forced to watch violent films while receiving electric shocks. Others recalled being buried alive, then rescued by their handlers, creating powerful bonds through manufactured trauma and relief. The most chilling aspect was the systematic nature of memory control. Programmers didn't just create new personalities. They installed amnesia barriers between alters. One personality might be a normal child attending school. Another could be trained for espionage or worse. Neither would remember the other's existence. Former CIA psychologist Dr. Martin Orn's notes, released through Freedom of Information Act requests, detailed how triggers worked. A specific combination of words, sounds, or images could instantly switch between personalities. The subject had no awareness of the transition. Children were preferred subjects because their minds were more malleable. Case files document elaborate systems where kids lived double lives, appearing normal to the outside world while undergoing intensive programming in secret facilities. Many never fully recovered their original personalities. These weren't isolated experiments. The scale was massive, spanning multiple decades and involving hundreds of documented cases. Each file represents a life deliberately shattered, then reconstructed as a weapon in America's shadow war. Survivors, testimony, and revelation. The silence began to crack in the late 1970s when something unexpected happened. People started talking, not government officials or CIA agents, but ordinary citizens who carried extraordinary scars. These were the survivors of Project Monarch, and their voices would shake the foundations of what Americans thought they knew about their own government. Sarah Chen was one of the first. She walked into a therapist's office in Chicago with memories that seemed impossible. She spoke of white rooms, strange doctors, and procedures that belonged in nightmares, not reality. Her therapist initially dismissed these accounts as fantasy. But Sarah wasn't alone. Across the country, others were remembering. Men and women who had been children decades earlier began recalling similar experiences. The same white coats, the same cold rooms, the same terrifying experiments designed to break their minds and rebuild them. These survivors faced a cruel reality. Who would believe such horrific claims? They had no proof, only memories that surfaced like bubbles from deep water. Many were labeled as mentally ill. Others were threatened into silence. Some simply vanished. But investigative journalists smelled something rotten. They began connecting dots between seemingly unrelated stories. A reporter in Washington noticed patterns. A photographer in New York started asking questions. Slowly, a picture emerged that was darker than anyone imagined. Then came the government committees. The Church Committee, in 1975, began digging into CIA activities. What they found shocked even seasoned politicians. Documents revealed programs with code names that sounded like science fiction. MKUltra, Monarch, Artichoke. These weren't fictional projects from spy novels. They were real. The Rockefeller Commission added more pieces to the puzzle. They discovered that the CIA had been conducting mind control experiments on American citizens without their knowledge or consent. Children had been used as test subjects. Hospitals and orphanages had been recruiting grounds. But the CIA had been clever. When investigators came looking, most records had been destroyed. In 1973, CIA Director Richard Helms ordered the destruction of MKUltra files. What remained were fragments, scattered pieces of a much larger picture. Still, enough evidence survived to prove the unthinkable. Government documents showed that American intelligence agencies had tortured their own citizens in the name of national security. They had taken children from vulnerable families and subjected them to psychological experiments that left lasting damage. The survivors who spoke out faced ridicule and threats. Legal battles stretched for years. Many died before seeing justice. But their courage had exposed one of America's darkest secrets, forcing the nation to confront what had been done in its name. Controversy and ongoing questions. The courtroom fell silent as another witness stepped forward. Her voice shook as she spoke about memories that haunted her dreams. Yet across the hall, government officials shuffled papers and exchanged doubtful glances. This scene played out dozens of times during the 1990s hearings about mind control programs. Project Monarch remains one of America's most heated debates. Some people point to official documents that prove the CIA ran experiments on human minds. Others say these claims go too far beyond what the evidence shows. The truth sits somewhere in this messy middle ground. Congressional investigations turned up shocking proof of government wrongdoing. Scientists had drugged patients without consent. They erased memories and tried to rebuild personalities from scratch. But when investigators asked for more files, they learned something disturbing. The CIA had burned most records in 1973. This missing evidence creates a perfect storm for conspiracy theories. Without complete files, people fill the gaps with their own ideas. Some survivors tell stories about being programmed as children to become assassins or spies. Their accounts are detailed and emotional, but proving them becomes nearly impossible without official records. Lawyers have filed countless lawsuits seeking justice for victims. A few cases won settlements, but most ended in frustration. The government argues that destroying files make fair trials impossible. Survivors say this destruction was meant to hide the worst crimes. Meanwhile, Project Monarch has taken on a life of its own in popular culture. Movies show mind-controlled agents carrying out secret missions. Books describe elaborate programming techniques using triggers and codes. These stories blend real declassified information with pure fiction until the line becomes blurred. Researchers continue digging through available documents. They find disturbing evidence of real experiments that violated basic human rights. But they also encounter wild claims that seem to stretch far beyond documented facts. This creates an ongoing puzzle that divides experts. Some government officials admit past mistakes while denying the more extreme accusations. They point to reformed oversight and new ethical guidelines. Critics respond that secrecy still prevents full accountability. The debate rages on in internet forums and academic conferences. Believers share testimony and analyze symbols they think prove widespread programming. Skeptics demand harder evidence and question recovered memories. Both sides claim science supports their position. What remains certain is that something terrible happened in those secret facilities. The question that haunts us today is simple, yet impossible to answer completely. How far did it really go?